Good morning, North America. Welcome to Church Talk TV. Lively talk about life, church, and church life. I'm your co-host, Dr. Bill Tenney-Britton, and I'm joined, as usual, by my co-host, Dr. Kris Tenney-Britton, and we're broadcasting from our studio in Columbia, Missouri, the heartland of America. Say good morning, Kris.
Well, good morning, and welcome to Church Talk TV.
Kris and Bill Tenney-Britton here today to talk about how do you get contact information from your first-time visitors when they show up, as they flood back into the church? Because I know you're just standing room only with visitors. Okay, maybe not, but people are starting to come back to church and in-person worship. And how do you get that contact information so you can follow up?
Right, and that's more important than ever right now because of that, right? And so we want to talk today just to touch on a little bit how to do that online, right? As
right. Yeah.
well
online
as
because you have people coming online,
offline, on site. I tend to call it. So
online and on site. It's all on. We're on completely.
We are on. Okay, so moving right along. So we've got to get that contact information in a couple of ways that we've seen done, and these may be familiar to you, but these are methods that don't work. One is the guest book. When people come in, and I'll tell you, some of the friendliest greeters I've met are there at that door, and they'll say, "Oh, please come and sign our guest book," and you don't have really any other choice except for how much information you put there,
or choose not to,
or choose right. Yeah, that doesn't tend to work.
Well, and so often the church will say, if you're a guest, if you'll sign our guest book, they'll say that announcement. Nobody does. And here's the reality is, if you're using guest book, just go back and look and see how much information you have. And remember through how much information you haven't got, because they're just not a very effective way of doing it.
Yeah, not very effective at all. And so then another, what I understand some churches call these friendship folders. We call them pew pads, and maybe you know those. They're these little vinyl pads, and they have this place for you to write down the name, your name, there, right? And a lot of times your long timers won't fill it out, or you have to get up. You're not a lot of people, and so they're in service or in the pew you're in as a guest, and so you have to get up or kind of slide over. It can be very, very awkward. There's another Go ahead.
So often. They just don't get past at all. They look at each other, whatever. And they don't even pass them.
They know who we are, Right. And so another one is having guests stand up and asking their names. But let me tell you, I think the worst we've ever had, it was having the members stand up and the guests stay down while the members sing you this very interesting, "We're glad you're here" kind of song. I don't know that any of them looked like they were glad we were here, except for the pastors.
And to be fair, when it came time to fill out the information, we didn't give them our address.
No, we didn't.
We were gone. We wanted nothing to do. So getting contact information is really important, especially for follow-up. I mean, now, and whether online or offline or on site. But the reality is some things don't work, and we want to talk about the best practices.
Yeah,
some things that really do work. And the churches that we've worked with that have done this have seen their contact information opportunities, if you will, it jumps up anywhere from 33% to over 66%. Depending on how cooperative you can get your congregation to be. And I have to tell you, if you can get 50% of all your first-time visitors giving you their contact information, I mean, talk about bonus. That is incredible.
Yeah, exactly. So, one of our best practices, one of the methods that we recommend is a contact prayer card. That it's in your worship packet, or if you have bulletins, it's in your bulletin, or even as part of your bulletin, on a little flap. That you can tear it off, and it has the contact information, but it's also a prayer card. How can we be praying for you? What kind of prayer do you need? And knowing that people show up for a reason, a lot of them will fill that out as a prayer card.
But there's another reason why you want to have both contact information and a prayer card, is because the reality is if you just hand those to your guests, they won't fill them out. It's just kind of conspicuous. Even though you're saying, drop it in the offering plate, if no one else is filling them out, they're unlikely to fill them out. But if you're encouraging your members to get everyone, and we'll talk about this in just a moment, but if everyone is filling them out, and the only reason your members have to fill it out is so they can share prayer requests, because they know you've got their contact information. So
Right.
if you're doing the prayer, it gives them a reason to pick up and write, if you will.
Well, and here's another piece, because you often are saying, right, you take time during the service
Right.
to write, you pause for everybody to fill that out. And I'll tell you, I mean, you know this, and y'all, a lot of you know this, I'm a church geek. I'm a church nerd. I love to visit churches, but every time I walk into a church, I'm looking at whatever I've been handed. I'm trying to make sense of it. And sometimes there's a lot of information, and before I know it, there's an offering plate or something being passed, and I haven't had time to do anything. So it's wonderful for when the person who's up front, be it the pastor or a lay person, says, hey, you know, we're going to be passing an offering, but here's a chance. Just take some time right now, fill out that prayer card that's in it if you have a prayer need, and then everything stops and allows for that to happen.
For the prayer need and also for the contact
For
card.
the contact, right. I mean, it's
yeah.
the same is
Right.
what I'm saying.
Right, exactly. And,
yeah.
and here's, if you want to get that done, and if you want to get that 50% or above, every single person in your congregation has to at least be writing something down. They can write tic-tac-toes. It doesn't make any difference, but as long as everyone is filling it out, your visitors will follow. There's this pressure, if you will,
Yeah.
of mob mentality. If everyone's doing it, they're more likely to do it. The problem is so often it's difficult to get your congregation to do that. It's like, you know
Right.
who I am, and I don't need to share my prayer
Right.
requests or whatever. So start with your leadership. And essentially insist, your leadership, I need you to do this.
Yeah.
And then, and when you don't have visitors some Sunday or some Sundays, remind people how important it is to fill those out. And when everyone's doing it,
Right.
you're going to get a huge increase in the number of visitor contact informations that you get.
Right. Well, and think of it as practice, right? If no one is there, you know, everybody knows one another. Think of it as practice for when everybody doesn't know everybody. So, practice, I don't believe in perfection, except in a Wesleyan kind of way. But anyways, that's all aside. But it becomes habit. When we practice something, and then it
Right.
becomes habit. So then you're ready for when those guests do come.
All right, well, and there's one more way
Yeah.
to really increase the number of your first-time guests who are willing to give their contact information. And that is to offer what we call an ethical bribe. I don't remember the first time we saw this. It was a church in Ohio, as I recall. We went and they said, "Hey, listen, you're a first-time visitor. You can help us cure hunger in our city." And when you fill out your first-time visitor contact information and you drop in the offering plate, we will give $5 to the local food bank, and in your honor. And they had, at that point, I think it was like March or April, and they'd given like a couple $1,000s to the local food bank. We were like, oh yeah, we're filling this out because it was making a difference. It was like, here's my part of making a difference, and it really does work. You offer, and now you have to follow through, but whatever your darling charity in the community is, whether it's the food pantry or a children's shelter or whatever it is, you pick out the one that's the darling, and you offer, say, hey, we're going to give $5 in your honor to this charity when you drop in your first time visitor contact card.
Yeah, exactly. Make sure you say where it's going. That's important. They want to know that, as you're saying. And you touched, just kind of like touched on, but to make sure that you say, hey, this is what we've given so far this year. Right. And so one, it says to him, this is a lively kind of place. You know, people are coming and I want to be part of that push. But it also reminds your members by saying to them, look what's happening here, folks. We are doing stuff for our community, and we have guests.
And here's the deal. If you're just getting started with this, and it's sort of embarrassing to say we've given $5 to that. One thing you can do is just make a lump sum gift to your food pantry, and you don't really have to separate out and say, hey, we've given $55 so far to the food pantry. You don't have to say that all those $5 came from People, just make sure it ends in a 0 or 5 so that it's not,
that's a good thing.
odd.
Yeah.
All right, so
All right,
there you are.
so let's talk for a moment about online forms.
And getting that contact information.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it is really hard. It's harder than getting contact information on site.
It's like pulling teeth, except
Right.
worse.
Yeah. Oh. So what you have to do is really push, compel, I'll say, your
Plead, beg. No, not
yeah, for people to complete that and then make that ethical bribe as well. So, again, stop for a moment. You're going to tell them how they can not register, but how they can let us know they were there. Right? We're not able to count everybody here. We're not able, to do that. But here is the form, and then
and don't forget, your prayer requests are on there,
right.
and you can have there. Hey, I'd like to have a call from the pastor, or an email from, or I'm interested in more information. It's the contact form,
Sure.
just like you would when you pass it in the church,
Yeah.
in the building. You do the same online. You fill it. You create this form that has all the parts in it. Get them to fill it out, and again, $5 for your local food pantry, or something national since you're online. Something though that compels them, it entices them to, I want to help support this ministry.
So do you have any suggestions for how we do that when someone's watching through, say, Roku or something that's streaming from your website? What about Facebook? What about YouTube? Some who watch there.
Great questions. And I got to tell you that the easiest way, and really about the only way that I've really seen effective, is you got to put a form on your website. And then you need to make that form on a page that has a URL or a web address that is not this long. So, make it a nice and short. So mychurch.com/connect or mychurch.com/form. Connect sounds nicer. But in any event, so you have a decent sized URL that you can say and that people can hear. And then you put that link in. You need to have a host on your Facebook. You need to have a host on your YouTube. And on Roku, that's streaming on your smart TV, there's no form going to show up. So you pretty much have to say it during the service and say, hey, for our online folks, we want you to, go to mychurch.com/connect and fill out that connection card. Let us know. And when you do, we will give $5 in your honor to da-da-da. So it really is, you're pointing them to that online form.
And what about a QR code? Now it's pretty easy
Absolutely.
to get QR codes made. So you could have you could whip up a QR code and flash it up there, and make sure you tell, for the older folk like me, make sure you tell them that, hey, just hold up your phone. You may have to pause for a moment, but just hold up your phone and with your camera and Zoom, it will take you right there.
And if you have
or your iPad.
If you have the editing software, of course, you can put that QR code. You can stick it in the bottom corner of your stream and just leave it there the whole time.
Oh, I like it.
So you can do that. By the way, put one on the other side for your offerings. Hey, we're almost out of time.
But not before I tell you about this. We have hospitality training online. And if you'll go to churchhospitality.us, one word, churchhospitality.us, it's right there. You can get up there and take hospitality training for your church.
And it doesn't cost you a thing.
Not
so,
a thing.
Hey, it's good to see you. We'll see you next week.
And have a great week. Bye-bye.